Okay. First off, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Robert Militia. I'm a technical support specialist here over at BrainMaster Technologies. Most of you guys have talked to me. If you haven't, you will in the future. Today, what I wanted to cover over with you guys is we are going over advancements in Event Wizard. Now, what does that mean to you? Well, first off, I want to cover the Event Wizard in a basic sense to basically help you guys understand what's going on with it, why it's created like it is, the power that goes behind it, and hopefully understand it a little bit better so there isn't as much of a terrify behind it. You know, so you understand it a little bit better, you can see how different things work in it. You get a good feeling on it. Another thing, and the reason it's called advancements, is I wanted to cover some of the new features that have come out in the Event Wizard. We got some new functions and some new different little features that have kind of been built into the Event Wizard that, you know, make it lost to the wayside if I don't show you guys how to use them and utilize them. And then final thing, if we have enough time, and we may go over, and I'll ask you guys later on if it's okay, of course, to go over, you know, if everyone's going to be on or whatnot. But later on, we're going to cover some more advanced features. Now, the nice thing about the advanced features is with the BrainAvatar software, actually most of those advanced features are already put in, and it's something, once again, that, you know, for most protocols and all that, you never have to do ever. It's already there. But to understand them is a very powerful thing, and that's why I kind of want to get over with you guys. Also, I want to now go over at this point in time some places that we have resources for you should you have any questions on anything. For example, most of the things that I am covering in this webinar today are in our user manuals. The most important one being called Event Wizard for BrainAvatar. There's a standalone version of it that's in the product manuals button, as I am displaying right here, that breaks down the Event Wizard screen basically one by one, gives you basic explanations of everything on it, goes through the data dictionary, or basically different things you can use inside of it, and some other different nice little things, you know, how to use it, some different things that go along with it. So this is a nice little tool that you have here for it. Also, another great way, when I go to the internet and I go to the BrainMaster website, which is www.brainm.com, if I go right here to this link right here called YouTube BrainMaster Training Videos, this is actually a semi-repeat of a webinar that I did around last November time. It is going to be in these webinar series right here. And I'm going to pause what's going on right here. And we are going to be right here, I believe it is this one right here, using the Event Wizard. Actually, I didn't think it's number 3. Yes. So this right here, a lot of the different things that I'm covering right now are also covered in that right there. Should you, you know, need any more information, or maybe I didn't cover something because I have already done it. So that's a nice tool that you have for that. Of course, the other place that is a great tool on it, and I'm going to show you real quick, we're on a specific table because I'm going to go to that here in a little bit, is the knowledge base. Whenever we get different fixes, different little bits of information, different articles, things like that, we are going to put them in the BrainMaster knowledge base, which is at www.brainm.com, brainm.com/KB, which you can also get from the BrainMaster main page right here under the online knowledge base, which you can click here to view our online knowledge base. It works on keywords. Of course, if you're looking for something in particular, the final tool that all of you guys have, of course, is technical support. You can reach us many different ways. Email, which is support, SUPPORT, at brainm.com. You can also reach us by calling into the main line, which would be area code 440-232-6000. If you dial option 3, you're going to get the main technical support line, which is going to ring us all over here. If you dial 207, you will get Ashley Johnson, and if you dial 211, you will get myself, Robert Militia. So those are some of the different tools that you kind of have in front of you that you can always use, you know, at your disposal at any point in time. We will be all here to help you as much as we can. But now that we got into it, let's go into the fully of what's new in the BrainAvatar Event Wizard. Now, there are some new functions that we wrote. And before I really start getting into it, what is the Event Wizard? Well, the Event Wizard is basically a way that we thought we can do more in the software than we initially thought. The initial software of the BrainMaster software was basically right here. You know, this bands page and this protocol page. Okay, so basically what we said is you're going to a specific site. For example, this one right here is FP1 to LE. And you can either stop inhibit training, you can go reward training, or you can ignore, do nothing. And that's how the software was built. Then you go to your feedback page and you say, well, what kind of rewards do I want? And of course you can do your reward sound, which means when all your criteria is met on that page, you get a bing. You know, you can do components, which means each of them are all individually. You can do a MIDI, which means that there's a different note for each of the components. And, you know, that was the original software. That's how it worked. That's all there was to it. And then they got to a point in time where there might be more features that we thought we can do. One of them being, of course, that's a very popular one and that most of you guys use out there, is, of course, Zscores. Zscores aren't a component like any other thing. It's not just FP1 to LE delta that I'm training. The way we do Z-scores, of course, is we're looking at a percentage of Z-scores that are within a range that we've defined. You know, a very complex idea that may not just be able to do simply with a screen like this. You know, that there's a lot of things that kind of are fluid in it, that are motion. So, because it got to a point in time where we got different things that might, you know, be useful for people, we created the Event Wizard. The Event Wizard, to basically look at it the easiest way, is just a little bit more complex of a version of this right here. All right? Let me break it down for you. So you got 16 different possible events that you can have in any one settings protocol. In order for that event to be able to be working, you have to enable the event, which would be in this first box right here where it says this event is, and then you don't have to worry about making it visible or anything like that. That was more of a feature that was in prior releases and actually will be disappearing here in a little bit. The event condition is basically this right here. So this delta go, stop, ignore. Think of that in your Event Wizard, all right? The first if statement right here is your band, all right? So right now we're saying x equals percent ZOKUL, train T 1, 8, train T 1, 4. That is if delta, all right? And then we're saying is rule, is greater than or, and then there are other ones. I would only worry about is greater than or is less than. So here we go. Is greater than, go. Is less than, stop. There it is. So right now we're basically not doing much more different. And then greater than, and then right now we have use equation x equals CT. So now what is that? Well, what are we greater than in here? Well, here we're greater than our delta threshold. Here we are greater than our variable that we have set up. So, to break down an Event Wizard thing right now, it is literally just this, with some bigger used words in it, and there's more flexibility that comes into it. You know, to go, and this is where it starts scaring people. Now you have a damping that you can do on it. What's a damping? A damping is basically a number put on it to slow down the rate that the data is coming in. If there is zero damping on it, the data is going to come in instantaneously. Whereas we start putting a number on there, you're going to notice that the number starts rolling. So let's just say you said in this one right here, let's see if I can show you a good way. And we're just going to break this down kind of bit by bit on this for you. So I'm going to go x equals 5. I always check my equation. And I'm going to do damping of 15 right here. And I'm going to do the same thing. Well, let's actually do this a different way. I know I'm changing things on the fly. Okay, so here we go. This is so you guys can see what's kind of going on right here and what I'm referring to, okay? We have the same function that we're using right now, which most of you guys who have done Z-scores know the CT basically is the C threshold for the upper or for your Z-score training. But to go into it a little bit further, I'm going to show you what the difference is. So now this one right here has a damping of 0 and this one has a damping of 15. So I'm going to hit Use Settings and Close, and I'm going to hit Go. All right, so we got our training going on, and we got our data coming in, and I'm going to go to the Z-score training right now. All right, now do you see how that number is changing right there slowly? That's because we've dampened the number. That number is going to end up at being at 10.0 like it is right now. But if I hit the C key, instantaneous change, dampened number. So basically we're saying we're going to get the same answer in time. We're just slowing down before we get that answer. So I'm going to do it one more time. I'm going to hit the C key one more time. We hit the C key, instant rolling. So that's one of those extra features that we have now in the Event Wizard that we don't have in our standard type of training. And then these are some of the things that, like I said, that people start getting terrified of when they start looking at the Event Wizard. So that's one feature right there that's new with this versus that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this back to 0. I'm going to change this back to this. And that's one of the reasons you do that. Now, you might be asking yourself your question, or some questions right here, like why do I keep hitting check equation? For those of you who are used to the old Discovery and 3.0 series software, you could never make a change in the Event Wizard without hitting the check equation button. In the latest BrainAvatar software, in some of the different versions, you can actually hit Use Settings and Close, and all the changes occur. The only thing is, if you make an error, you don't know unless you hit this check equation. When you hit that and you see equation OK, you know that whatever you put in is a valid thing and the software understands it. So that's why I always hit check equation. So now we've explained that this top portion right here, this event condition, is exactly the same thing as basically saying go on delta. Only now we're using more complex equations that, of course, you can get basically all your definitions or all your information in this data dictionary right here. This has all the different ones you can use, all the different features out of it. Now, the next portion of it comes into the event result. Much like our feedback right here, our sound type. What do we want to do? Well, for events, the first thing you always have to do is make sure you got a little check mark in this event box right here. Then when you have that check mark right there, everything is controlled in this event results area. So if I say play MIDI sound, the MIDI sound will play directly for this one. If I say play wave sound, the wave sound is going to be affected for this one. Another feature you can do is, for example, if you are kind of doing the classic style, you can do inhibit event sounds, which means if that is successful, you are going to inhibit any other sounds from occurring. And there are other features that can be put in here, of course. You can, of course, award a point counter. Which basically is another feature of the classic one, which means when this event is successful, I'm going to say you did it 1 time, or 2 times, or 1,000 times. You can also control the second point counter here. Most of you guys might not know this, but we actually do have 2 point counters in the software. It was actually built in for couples training, and it has other purposes that have been used out there. One, for example, is for our brain track that was actually on on a show in the BBC for a while, which allowed neurofeedback training to basically control little cars. So that's built in for that, as well as these activate relays. So most of you guys, unless you guys own a brain track, will never use activate relay 1 or 2. And then there are 2 other features of flash photic once or activate photic stim for those of you who have stim flash, who has a stim flash in there. So that would be our event result, which is basically the exact same thing as our feedback right here. The next section right here is our event trend graph. Okay, so we got data coming in. You know, we're doing some different things that aren't like the classic standard style of training. How am I going to view that? I mean, you know, everyone else has the standard graph, you know, all the standard, you know, screens and all that. That's how I see it. I know the thermometers. How do I view an event? Well, they created different screens, of course, when I go right here, called event trend graphs. And in the BrainAvatar software, we've even gone even further, that you can actually display it in a thermometer, much like you could a standard amplitude or a standard filtered waveform. So, in order to basically view what you're going to view, you have to say what size I'm going to view on. That is where this comes in right here, our event trend graph. There are two factors to it. Our scale factor. How big do we want it? What does the number mean? Well, it all depends on what you're looking at. So it does change values. For example, in this one right here, if we're doing PZOK, we're looking at a percentage range. If we're doing amplitude training, it'd be microvoltage. If we were doing region of interest amplitude training, it'd be nanoamperes per cubic millimeter. So it's not really has any value. It has a value of a unit. And depending on what you're using and what you're training is going to change. So right now we're looking at a scale factor of 100 and an offset of 0. Offset means where do I want to begin? So if I have a scale factor of 100 with an offset of 0, I am going to say my scale is from 0 to 100. That's simple. The next thing that we have is our event name. Once again, for those of you who are using the Discovery software or the 3.0 series software, don't have this. In the latest BrainAvatar software, we have given the ability to name events. Now, what is the purpose of that? Well, you can see right here. For example, if I am doing PZOK UL training and I have a thermometer, whatever my training event name is going to be displayed on the thermometer I'm displaying. Also, to go a little bit further, if I go and I'm going to delete this, this is another reason. All right. For those of you who are used to the software and all that, one of the things you always notice is that your patients are basically seeing all this gobbledygook, which means absolutely nothing to them. By putting a name in, we clean that up. And all that they know at that point in time is it's training to them. They don't need to know that we're looking at the percent ZOKUL, train T, you know, all that stuff right there is greater than this. All they need to know, as I just hit my wrong button, is that it's Zscore PZOKUL training. And that's the reason we put that event name in, because it identifies it a lot easier. It is nicer for thermometers so you can see the actual information, and it's just not as confusing and not as cluttered. The next portion you have right here is your sustained reward criterion and refractory period. Now that's another thing I forgot to show you guys that's a part of the original software. And that is, as I got to remember, give me one moment. It's right here. All right. In the original software, and still going on in our software, you have the control of the global sustained reward criterion for all channels as well as refractory period. Now what these mean is that the sustained reward criterion means that this training, whatever you have set up, must be met for this many milliseconds in order for whatever you have for your feedback is successful. And in order to get a point. The global refractory period goes a little bit further. After a reward occurs, you must wait this many milliseconds before you can even have a possibility of another reward. So it basically says, like, for example, if you say 500 milliseconds to 500 milliseconds, is that the next reward might be 1 second before you can even hear it again. So the Event Wizard, once again, has given the capabilities of that exact same feature right there, but as opposed to being a global for all of them, you can actually control it event by event. So where this one might be 0 milliseconds to 0 milliseconds, the next one might be a sustained reward criterion of 500 milliseconds and a refractory period of 0 milliseconds. It's controlled all by you. Then the final thing that I'm going to cover over here in the Event Wizard is our MIDI sound properties. Now, for those of you who use this, this gives you a little bit more control over the reward sound if you use Play MIDI Sound. You can choose the starting note, the instrument, the type of playing, modulation, starting loudness rate if you want it to change, loudness change rate if you're doing amplitude, note change rate if you're doing pitch, what type of musical scale you're doing, a lot of different great features on it. One of the nice things that's also kind of convenient to the BrainAvatar software is you can actually control what tab you're going to do this on. For example, most of ours are set to on all tabs. Let's say in this protocol, I only wanted the Zscore training to occur on my Zscore training tab. I can go to main tab 4, then the sound is only going, this reward sound right here that is occurring is only going to happen when I'm on this page right here. And if I'm on another tab, you're not going to hear it at all. So that's a little flexible feature you have on there. Now, I'm not the best really when it comes down to getting sounds out here. There are a couple people out there who are excellent for this. Tom Brownback of Brownback Mason is remarkable with what sounds are best to choose and all that, and you know, really good at that. Mark Smith is also very, very good at it. Another great person on that is Penny Jean Rudder, and so is Dick Gennardi. They're really good. What I'm going to give you is the very nitty-gritty out of it, okay? When it comes down to picking out your MIDI sound properties, try to remember, or I'm going to put it in my terms, I try to remember the Casio keyboard that I had when I was 5 years old. It was a little tiny plastic keyboard that I loved hitting the demo button on and letting it play the music and pretending like I knew how to play an instrument. But there was a little bit more that came into it, and that is there is a sustained and there is a percussive method to it. And you have to think about what you actually want to use as far as what type of reward sound you're going to get back and what type of instrument you're choosing. For example, steel drums is a very good one that can be sustained and it can be percussive. If you're doing it as percussive, realize that it's going to be, you might not hear that over it, but basically it's going to be hitting the steel drum as it's basically crossing. It's a percussive note. It's, you know, it's not doing much more. A sustained note is going to be as if I'm holding that button down. And there are different instruments that are very good for that. For example, organ. If you hold the organ button down on your old Casio keyboard that you might have had, you're going to hear that organ play forever. But the one Taiko, you hold that button down and you're just going to hear it one time. So that's the difference between percussive and sustained. So not all instruments can be percussive and not all of them can be sustained. They're not really designed to really play that way. If you do an organ as a percussive, it's going to be a very annoying sound and it's not going to be what it's kind of intended to do. But some of them can kind of flip between them. So really when it comes down to what you're going to choose right here, you can either A, talk to some other people out there who have some great recommendations on what to play, what gives them good feedback and other things of that, or you can just play around in simulation mode. That's what I usually do, and I think that is a great way to usually start off. As far as the other settings on here, most of these are fairly standard and a pretty good way to go. A loudness rate that's not too loud. You aren't doing too much changing on different things, and the note isn't too high and isn't too low. So that's the basic of the Event Wizard right there. As I was kind of going over with you guys, there's not much change over doing the classic way. If you were loading up Focus or something like that and you were doing some SMR training and you were doing some changes, you're like, you know what, I don't really like this. I like to have it for 1 second global sustained reward criterion, and I like to do component sounds on it. You know, that's the Event Wizard. You're basically doing the exact same thing, except you have a more finer tune and a finite control on it. And that's the benefits of using the Event Wizard over the standard amplitude style training. Now, let's go over, now that I've given you kind of the nitty-gritty and the overview on the actual Event Wizard itself, now let's go over some of these new features in it. Some of the different webinars and all that, I've covered bits and pieces here and there. And in this webinar, I'm going to go over them again, just maybe in a little bit more detail. One of the new features in the software is going to be right here, and you're going to notice it on the first page of the data dictionary for the event wizard. You have standard variables computed in real time, up to 4 channels. Now you have this one right here called standard functions computed in real time using BrainMaster built-in filter for up to 24 channels. That is a large change. So now we have these new, as we call them, functions that are built in that give you a longer range of getting at more training channels. Now you got to ask yourself, what's the difference between a variable and a function? Very simple. A variable is just that. It's basically an idea that gets assigned by something else. So I'm going to go into this random, I'm going to go into a random later event of this protocol right here and show you. X equals D, as we know from looking at here, is basically channel 1 amplitude from digital filters for one of the 8 components. All right? So D equals channel 1 delta, which if we go here, we're going to see right there. Now I'm going to go right down here, and I'm going to go TRNA 1, 1. And my check equation, I'm going to see OK. So now what we know by our event wizard right here is we are looking at TRNA, or train amplitude. We are looking at channel X amplitude for the Y band. So 1, 1 equals channel 1 delta. So as you can see, these are looking at both the exact same thing. Now, once again, in certain circumstances, one-channel training, you're probably going to just stick with the variables because they're very easy to use. There's not much of a change to them. It's D, where this, I had to do all this typing and I had to realize what I was looking at. Where does this come out as the winner? When you start changing the variable and you don't change its definition here. So if I go to the bands page right here, most of you guys might know the bands page. This is the page where you get a lot of customization on what the filter bands ranges are, as well as what their names are. So if I happen to change the variable, I have now changed this variable. I've said, you know what, I want my first band to be the webinar band. Well, now I have changed the variable and the software does not know what D is anymore. As you can see, warning, the A equation was successfully parsed. However, the following undefined variables were discovered and have been created, D. So now we are repurposing what was originally created as delta as 0 right now because D stood for delta. Delta does not exist anymore. Webinar exists in its place, but TRNA 1, 1 still stands for channel 1, band 1. Channel 1, band 1. So even though we might have changed the name and changed the definition of it, TRNA still knows exactly what we're looking at. And that is where that's where a function is much better than a variable. Is when you're changing what could possibly be done with a variable. If you never change this right here, you stick with your standard settings and you use that all the time, are you going to probably have that issue? Probably not. But it gives you that flexibility just in case something happens. For example, there are people out there who will use different bands and different things for different purposes and different functions and different names. The nice thing about these right here is you never have to worry about them. You can put in those changes and they will always be there. For example, what we're doing in this first event right here. It says %ZOKUL, and let's look up that event real quick. Or let's look up the function that we're doing right there. Go down right here. Okay, and here are all of our Zscore functions right here. Okay, so what we're looking at is %ZOKUL upper and lower, which right now is the percentage of Z-scores that are below the upper limit and above the lower limit. It returns a value of 0 and 100. So what we have here is percent ZOKUL TRNT 1,8 TRNT 1,4. So what we're saying is we are looking at, well, let's find out what we're saying we're looking at. TRNT or TRNT threshold. So channel X threshold for channel Y band. So we are looking at the first channel and the 8th band, or the U key as everyone is used to seeing in the Zscore training, and the 4th band, the L key, which is relatively a new way of looking at it. A lot of different people have changed their protocols to that, so it makes more sense. ZOKUL, upper U, lower L. So that's what it says right there. Now, what is the positives of this? There are certain people out there who will like to do amplitude training on top of their PZOK training. What this allows you to do is to do that amplitude training in changing the name of the band. And then you have no issue with it. You don't have to worry about this changing this at all. This will always be the change. The other nice thing about this, and like I said, I've said this in the Zscore webinar, but I'm going to say it again, is that with this right here, if you change the BrainDX or if you change the BrainMaster Zscores, you don't have to do any fiddling with this. It is going to be this right here, and it is always going to look at the 8th band and the 4th band's threshold no matter what you change to. So the nice convenient thing about functions that I'm going to reiterate again, and that what I did right here, is that you change nothing. Can you still use Uther and Elther right here that a lot of people have in their events? Absolutely. That is still going to function as is intended. This just gives you a little bit more flexibility on it so you don't have to worry about it. So that is probably one of the grandest, newest changes that's been in the Event Wizard that's in there right now. The other change that's in there is that in representation, or I shouldn't say representation, it takes place in doing Loretta ROI training or any type of Loretta training that works with that function right there. And now right now what we're looking at is X equals Loretta ROI A pound ROI frontal lobe, comma 1. Well, let's take a look at our thing and see exactly what that means. Loretta ROI A, comma, ROI, or parenthesis, ROI, comma, band, close parenthesis. So basically it trains the band activity at the chosen region of interest. This is where they can be found, the listings for the ROIs. And then the bands are, and I gave the basic uses of them. So, if we go right here to our knowledge base, these are the different types of implementations that you can do to choose your region of interest. So, for example, the frontal lobe can either be implemented as 1, and we know the other one stands for our first band, which is delta. So I hit check equation, says everything is okay. The other implementation of it is an indexed implementation. Now what this is, so you understand why that there's two purposes, or let me go through all the reasons for the different implementations. The original implementation was basically taking the ROIs as we had them and numbering them 1 through, I think it was 82. That's the original implementation. The indexed implementation was a newer methodology, and that was all 1000 series are going to be the lobes. All 2000 series are going to be the gyri, or gyrus. I don't know how to best say that. I've been saying gyri as a plural, but I could probably be completely wrong on that one. 3000 series were all the Brodmann areas. And what I haven't updated yet, and I do apologize ahead of time, the 4000 series are the network hubs. The Salient Network, the DMN, the Default Mode Network by Gennardi or Kaiser, and other things of that nature. So that's the reason for the original and the indexed. Indexed is a little bit cleaner because it breaks it down to the different, types of lobes, gyrus. You kind of get a little bit cleaner on it. A lot of people have used this. I know Mark Smith uses this. I believe Penny Jean kind of still uses it. I'm not entirely sure. But, they both work. The final one is the GUI implementation. And that is basically by hitting the pound sign, you will open up a special graphical user interface. That is this right here. And it allows you to open up and choose from here what you would like to choose. Now, occasionally, that may or may not open. I think we finally fully gotten it working so that it should always pop up. But if it doesn't, you actually have this GUI implementation. So if you really wanted to use this, you can still just type it in, and it will work. So that is some of the information on there, right there, of what's going on. Now, we've added some really new features to this. And I want to say that use this with caution. These are very powerful tools that I'm going to give you right here. And it's probably best for analyzation versus actual training. But if you want to use it, it is, of course, the clinician's responsibility to use a feature to the best of its ability, and it functions as intended. As opposed to choosing a specific ROI. If I type in select ROI, this feature is going to work with a special function. I can also, as opposed to choosing a specific band, I can type in select band. What am I doing right here? By typing in these two functions, I am going to let my ROI and my band to be decided by the display that you guys all know and love, the ROI head map. So as I change what I'm looking at as my component and what I'm looking at as my ROI, the training and the data that is coming in is going to change accordingly. So it is a very powerful thing, and it's very easy. For example, if you are working with someone and you're using a protocol like I'm using right now, which is a very popular protocol, it's just this is a Zscore surface training with ROI amplitude training. What's nice is you can start the day off saying, I'm going to train here. And you can start training there. And you can also change the component, and then it's going to go. But know if you go, I want to look here, it's going to change that too. Let's see what I'm actually doing in effect. So we can kind of see exactly what I'm referring to more than anything. All right. So here we go. And so I got my Delta 1 coming in, and you can see it's kind of a slow wave, as it is. And when I hit Delta, up, we got to change. It's changing a little bit. If I go to Alpha, that's the data changing right there. And then to go even further, here we go. So you see, as I'm basically doing my select ROI, as I'm changing my ROI, and as I am changing my information going on with it, it is changing in accordance to select ROI and select band. As I said, a very powerful feature, and just something to always watch out for. Just make sure that, when you're doing it, if you're using it, you probably don't want it to be for an analyzation, or you probably don't want to basically just be clicking off, because you are going to change your training as it jumps through. Okay, so those right there are the two newest features that are kind of in there. Okay, no problem, Mike. Yeah, I was actually going to get back in there. Actually, just so you guys also know, it's this event right here. As you can see, it's X equals Loretta ROI-A, and then parentheses, select ROI, all capital letters, comma, select band, all capital letters, close parenthesis. To go a little bit further in this, as I said, knowledge base, great place. If I go to www.brainav.com/kb, if we go right here to BrainAvatar Protocols, you will notice in my big old giant description of all the different things that's going right here, we have a PZOK-UL with ROI-ANI 3D head map select, and we have one for BrainDX with 3D head map select. So we've actually already created some protocols that actually already do that for you. So you can actually download those from right here, follow the instructions on where to place them. And once again, know that these protocols, designs, and all designs provided by BrainMaster Technologies, Inc. are for demonstration and illustration purposes only. It is the clinician's responsibility to ensure that any designs used provide the intended feedback. Now, it is 4:46. If you guys wanted to, I had one kind of very advanced protocol that I was going to break down on why you do the things, what's going on with it, all the different features and functions that go into it, and it kind of elaborates on a lot of the different things I was going into. But as I said, we're going to be running out of time right here. So if you guys would like me to continue, I'll continue. As I said, the nice thing about the Event Wizard is that it really gives you flexibility on what you can do, and basically, as opposed to having the answer of no, I can't do it, the answer is yes, I can. I have the capabilities. I just have to figure it out on what exactly I want to do. There is one protocol that really fits that out in the software, and basically what I did, I'm going to actually repeat myself right here: File, Import Settings, Discovery Protocols. It is, I always get too many protocols in here. I'll do this one right here. Zscore is using S-Loretta Absolute Power 3D Head Map Select, okay? So what this protocol is actually doing right now is it's doing Zscore region of interest training to a specific band. This is a little bit different than what we normally do with our PZOK-UL. PZOK-UL basically says, I'm taking a whole bunch of Z-scores, and I want to look at the percentage of those Z-scores, and I want those percentage of Z-scores to fall above my line that I'm setting right there. This is more of a specific region of interest, specific band, and training that particular Z-score right there. So, as I was saying, this is set up with the S-Loretta Z-score training to a particular region of interest and a particular band. Now, there are ways that you, of course, do region of interest training. The way I kind of set this up here is in the same PZOK-UL style, only to that region and band. And that's having an upper and lower threshold. Now, in order to do that, it's not just the easy PZOK-UL and then putting your upper and lower, because we're not working with that function exactly. We're working with a different function when we do that. As you can see, it's the Loretta ROI or Loretta ROI ZAP select ROI and select band. Once again, we'll go back to our event wizard right here, or data dictionary right here, and we'll look up the Loretta ROI ZAP ROI band, which means it trains the absolute power of the Z-score at the chosen region of interest. And of course, we've gone through all those little jibber jabbers right there, and we know where they're using select ROI and select band. Okay, so in order to do the upper and lower for something like this, which you can technically do with other things, is the first thing is it's X equals Loretta ZAP, select ROI and select band. If it is less than train T1, which is our upper threshold. And you know how I know that? 1,8, channel 1, 8th band, user band, U key. So if it is less than our upper band, which means it's falling within our range, play MIDI sound. Seems easy enough to start off with. Well, let's go to the next one. Oh, well, this is where we have one of those other things. If that same exact equation is greater than my upper threshold, well, I don't want event sounds to occur. So we're going to inhibit event sounds. The next one, well, now we're saying, okay, same exact equation is greater than my lower threshold. And how do I know that's my lower threshold? TRNT 1,4. Fourth band is low beta, L key. So if it is greater than my lower threshold, then I want to do nothing. And then finally is that same exact equation. If it is less than my lower threshold, then I want to inhibit event sounds. Now, why am I doing this in 4 events? It is very simple, because one event needs to basically drive it, and 2 events, these ones right here, need to basically make sure that it doesn't happen always. So what this does is this says, right now, this says if it's less than my upper threshold, play the MIDI sound. Well, without putting this in right here, when it's lower than my lower threshold, I'm still going to hear sounds. So you need to prevent that from occurring. On the other end, you also want to just make sure that when it goes above my upper threshold, I don't want any sounds to occur. So by having these 2 events right here, this basically locks my sound right here into only occurring when it falls in my upper and lower threshold as far as rewards occur. Okay. Now I'm going to go right here, and I'm going to see this thing called E6F 0.5 Control MMP Player. May not make any sense to you, so let's move on. Let's find out what's going on. Or before actually we do that, let's break down what that's actually looking at. All right? So right here, values from other events. As this says right here, events can be read real-time data from other events. The events that proceed numerical order so that events can be evaluated and act in order. E6F. If I go down here, right here to where I see my Fs, E6F is the value of flags for events 1 through 16. These are 0 if the event conditions are not met, and 1.0 if the event condition is met. These are also, don't worry about that anymore. So what this is saying is basically EXF is basically a Boolean controller. Now, a Boolean controller, for those of you who don't know what that means, is basically a true-false statement. So if whatever is occurring in event 6, E6F, which is basically this event condition, so if the event condition for event 6 is true, then what I'm getting returned here is a 1. If it is a false, I'm going to get a 0. All right? Now, that would explain why I have a 0.5 right here. We're saying that I need this event to be greater than this number. And if that's true, I'm actually controlling the MMP player. And for those of you who are not wise to this, event 5 is also where we control our flash player. So this is going to control 2 big things. So what's going on in event 6 is probably very important. So let's go to event 6 and figure out what's going on. All right, so here's where the 3rd event comes into effect that I didn't cover. When I was going through and controlling about sounds and all that, I basically said, and I actually have an error right here, I got to fix my errors. I basically said, you only have to worry about event 1 and event 2 and 4 control the sounds. But I didn't really go over what event 3 does. Well, event 3 is actually a very important thing because right now we're flagging those. So I'm saying if event 1, the event condition for event 1 is true, and then add that to the event condition of event 3 is true. And I want them greater than 1.5. Now, why am I doing 1.5? You can do 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.9. You want it to not be 1. You want it so that, and the reason I'm doing this right here is so that both events need to be true. You don't get rewarded when only one of them is true. You have to have both being met. So that's the reason that this right here is occurring. So if the event condition for event 1 is true, which is basically if this is less than my upper threshold, and if event 3 is true, which event 3 is if it is greater than my lower threshold. So both of those must be true, which means it must be squished right into the middle of that. If they are both true, then I'm going to get a value of 2. And if I'm going to get a value of 2, then this event condition is true. And if this event condition is true, well, then I'm rewarding everything. My people can watch the MMP player, they can play their Flash games, and they can do some other things that are actually really cool too. And you might have noticed me jump real quick all of a sudden to event 12. And this is actually a special event that we kind of have in right now. It has to be modified a little bit better, and it was kind of the original implementation of it. There's going to be a better implementation out because I know some people over at Zukor that have made this work really, really excellent with 2 bands or 1 band or 3 bands, and that's why I kind of jumped to this event 12 right here. Now you may be asking yourself, I'm going off on a tangent. Well, no, I'm not. One of the things that you can have with your events is wanting to use it with third-party programs. There are probably 3 major ones that are out there. There's, of course, Somatic Vision, which has Inner Tube and Particle Editor. You got CIS, which has like 3D Relief and Stone Soup and other programs of that nature. And now, of course, you got brand new Zukor, which has Grind, and I believe they're going to have some new games coming out very soon that are very, very customizable and very controllable. Now, a lot of those games work off of the classic amplitude. So we're back to this page right here. Protocols, goes, stops, ignores, blah, blah, blah. Using this. How does it know what a Z-score is? It doesn't. It knows what delta is. It knows what delta threshold is. It knows what these things are. BrainMaster thought about that ahead of time. We made it so that all of those third-party softwares are controllable with our advanced Event Wizard system. And how it's done is right here in this area. DLL memory mapping mode. Standard is going to be your standard protocols right here. Go, stop, ignore, reward, inhibit, delta, theta, alpha. Emulation mode, on the other hand, what we have done is we have converted event 9 through 16 to become, and I'm doing parentheses, or I'm doing little quotation marks, bands. All right? So here we go. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And in the standard settings, we happen to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 filtered bands. So emulation mode basically says event 9 is delta. Event 10 is theta. Event 11 is alpha. Event 12 is low beta. Event 13 is high beta. Event 14, oh wait, I missed something. All right, hold on. Delta, theta, alpha. Event 12 is low beta. Event 13 is beta. Event 14 is high beta. Event 15 is gamma. And event 16 is user. So now when these third-party softwares look at the BrainMaster software and it's running and you have a protocol in emulation mode, it's going to basically go, I see delta. Okay, I see delta above the threshold. Okay, I'm going to go. So basically we have basically said to it, it's that threshold. And to go even further, all events that use the Event Wizard as the major driving mechanism are already done. So all Zscore protocols already have that done in there for you. It's already marked as emulation mode. You guys don't have to do anything. But there's a reason I'm showing you guys. And there's always a method to everything that I show you guys. And that is because what if you don't want one control? What if you don't want one variable? What if you want multiple variables? That's why I'm explaining this to you, because now you have the capabilities and the abilities to control those multiple variables. For example, I have it set up basically when both are successful, and just so you can see, E5A is greater than E5B. Now, what is that exactly? Well, we see all of our A commands here says the value of the antecedent variables in events 1 through 16. Big word to basically say if the original if portion, or as I defined it earlier, as my band. All right, so this portion right here, so E5A is looking right here at E6F. All right, so if that number, whatever that is, and it's just going to display that number as it is. So if it's 1, then it's going to display a 1. If it's a 0, it's going to display a 0 right here. Is greater than E5B. And if we look at this, is the values of the condition variables in events 1 through 16. So that is looking at the rule portion right down here. So it's saying E5B is saying is greater than 0.5. So, or 0.5. So to make it even simpler, E5A is looking at the A portion or the top portion. E5B is looking at the bottom portion. So this is saying if E6F is greater than 0.5. It's a fancy way of doing it, but what's nice is if those numbers change and you still want to use that event, you don't have to now. You don't have to change anything like that. What if I was actually looking at moving this over into that area? Well, if I was just putting those numbers, I'd have to change it to right here. But if I'm looking at the A portion and B portion, no matter what's in there is going to be affected here. So once again, that's kind of the difference between a variable and a function again. This is kind of more of a function to help prevent me having to do more work later in the future. So for what I set up in the third party here, is I only set up one function. I said when both are successful, make your thing go. But if you really wanted to, with the knowledge I'm giving you, is you can have a second function of it. You can basically say, well, what if I wanted it to be when my upper is in the range, but when my, I want it to be driven half of the way, and when my lower, I want it to be driven another way. And you can basically have more control over it in that nature that you have other factors going through it. And that is the main reason I was showing you guys that right there. It broke down a lot of different things that you can do in the Event Wizard. So once again, as I was basically saying as the final thing is, the Event Wizard gives you the ability to say, I can. In basically any representation possible. And that would be the conclusion of my presentation today. Now, do you guys have any questions on anything that has been covered? I know I went through a whole lot of stuff, but, any questions? All right, I see a question. Are the Inhibit Sounds in BrainAvatar a library, or can you also use MIDI sounds? Well, yeah, you can. I mean, the Inhibit Sound basically says, I don't want any sounds. So the reason that I use that is that if it was greater than the upper threshold, well, when it went below the lower threshold, the MIDI sound can still occur. So we want to inhibit that from occurring. So basically it's saying that it's still bad, or I'm now giving it reward sounds. So it's just basically saying stop playing that sound. I mean, you could probably use the MIDI sound as an inhibit sound. Like if you don't want something to occur, you can probably use it as basically a negative reinforcement type thing, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's perfectly capable as far as a feature goes. One of those functionalities is, once again, in standards training you don't have. But yes, Event Wizard, yes, you can absolutely do a play MIDI sound when it's less than, and have some annoying noise that's just set up not how it's supposed to, percussive, and have it bleeding awful that it hurts the ears to prevent them from doing that. Sure. Criteria from a qualitative standpoint is used for an inhibit versus a reward sound. Yeah, it's subjective. In the classic style of amplitude style of training, the idea was you rewarded one band and you inhibited two. So that basically, in order for the reward to occur, both other sounds had to be below the, or it had to be below their inhibits, and then when it went above the reward, you would get, of course, your reward sound. No other sounds would occur unless you were meeting those criteria right there. So it's really, I mean, it's up to when you want to do it. You can do it really whenever you want to, and, I mean, everybody kind of has their different views on it. Okay. Well, I think everyone's kind of got a little bit of an overload right now. So I'm just going to say, if you guys do have any questions, of course, I gave the information out earlier, but I'm going to give it out again. You contact us, support, SUPPORT, @brainam.com, area code 440 232-6000. You can contact us at option 3, which will get the main technical support line. You can contact us at 207 for Ashley Johnson, 211 for Robert Militia. And we're here to assist you with different things, and we'll be more than happy to help you. But other than that, I hope you guys had a wonderful day. I hope I got you useful information on these things. Now, just so you guys know, this information that I gave you might be specific to the BrainAvatar, some of the new features and functions and all that, but the Event Wizard, as far as the functionality, hasn't really changed between the 3.0 or Discovery software. So a lot of the things I showed you are going to function perfectly fine in those softwares, as well as the BrainAvatar software. And I'm glad I could help you guys out in any way, shape, or form. Other than that, you guys have a wonderful rest of the day and take care now.